Alfred Kinsey wrote the Sexual Manifesto for the Youth, for the sexualization of the world's youth. Without Alfred Kinsey, there would have been no Playboy and Hugh Hefner. Hugh Hefner was a virgin in college. After Hugh Hefner read Alfred Kinsey's reports, he was completely just fascinated with it, and he left school and he went and started Playboy, and he called himself Alfred Kinsey's pamphleteer. His studies ushered in the sexual revolution of the 1960s and the 1970s. Now, in 1947, Alfred Kinsey funded the Institute for Sex Research at Indiana University. It's in Bloomington, Indiana. It's still there today and operating. Now it's called the Kinsey Institute. Now, Alfred Kinsey founded the Kinsey Institution to conduct what he called research, into human sexuality. Because Alfred Kinsey believed that children were sexual from birth, and they should have sexual rights to the sexual pleasure. And his hypothesis was that sexual behavior was normal among all societies, among all ages, and among all individuals. What a lot of people don't know about Alfred Kinsey is how he conducted his research and how he got his conclusion. Alfred Kinsey literally documented the abuse of a number of infants as young as 5-month-old babies, toddlers, and older children, and these children were sexually abused by pedophiles in order to induce orgasms that were then timed with a stopwatch over a 24-hour period. And Alfred Kinsey claimed that doing this research proved that children derived sexual pleasure from their sex abuse. Even if they were crying, convulsing, or screaming, he classified their rejections, those cries and screams, as orgasms. And the way he categorized it was a thing called 6 types. 6 types of what he called climax. So when the baby cried, when the baby screamed, when the baby went into convulsions, he considered that a form of ecstasy. And however long that took, that time frame it took, was calculated with a stopwatch, and that's how long the ecstasy or orgasm for these children lasted. That's how long they enjoyed it. Here's a quote from Kinsey. "Some boys suffer excruciating pain and may scream if movement is continued or the penis even touched. Will fight away from the partner. The boys may weep, faint, and scream no. They derive definite pleasure from this situation." The man was sick.
Don't look now, but they're attacking Dr. Kinsey again. The book is titled Kinsey, Sex, and Fraud, The Indoctrination of a People. We should say that you are the author of The Homosexual Matrix, a book which got quite a positive response from...
I want to agree with Reisman on one point. I think we really ought to talk about the child stuff before we mix in the
right, well, make your point,
homosexual stuff. We really shouldn't go too fast there. We want to savor that because it is wonderful. It's so delicious what she says. I want to draw you a picture of the image. The image is that the world-famous sex researchers, or Dr. Kinsey alone, that's not quite clear, are in a room, and they hover over a young child, less than a year old, and with their fingers or a feather, that's not quite clear, they tickle the genitalia and bring this kid to orgasm, who is screaming and hollering and possibly held down by chains.
And drugged.
It's all too glorious.
Well, make your point. I hope that you don't... you're being sarcastic, but I want to make sure...
I didn't mean to be sarcastic.
Now, what is the point?
You
what is
tell
your
me
point?
What is the point. 5 months old. What is it? I can hardly read it. What's next to that? Number of orgasms. Oh, number of orgasms. 3. Go down to the 4-year-old. You see the 4-year-old there?
Yeah.
There, bottom one.
Yes,
4-year-old, 26 orgasms in 24 hours. Tell me, Phil. Does a baby sleep? Tell me, Phil. Does a baby sleep? Tell me if this is scientific. A baby sleeps for 8 hours? And you tell me how you get 26 orgasms for 24 hours.
We've got to be able to get a word in edgewise.
Just a minute.
Sounds like a guest for the Donahue show.
And you know what Gebhardt said to me? You know what Dr. Gebhardt said? He wrote me a letter, which I wish you had up there too, in which he said that oral and manual techniques were used on the children. Now, Phil, I'm going to say that once more. I'm going to say that once more. And if I'm wrong, let them sue me. He said oral and manual techniques were used on those children. And that.
How does C.A. Tripp respond to that?
She's talking about data that came from pedophiles, that he would listen to only pedophiles who were very careful, used stopwatches, knew how to record their things, did careful surveys. And these she resents very much, but they're very important.
So he interviewed people who were known criminals. I assume, were they in prison at the time?
Oh, certainly not. But they were, in her sense, criminals because they were pedophiles. But they were trained
Oh, in her sense,
observers.
they were criminals because they were pedophiles. They're raping children and they're not criminals. You're going to defend
Nobody
that.
was raping children. What they were doing...
What do you call sexually, manually, and orally abusing a baby, and you're a bloody pedophile?
The timing. It was dependent on what it was. Most of it was done by one individual, a man with some scientific training, but not a known scientist. The other cases were done by parents at our suggestion. And let's see, then there were some that were done by nursery school personnel. Was that at your suggestion too? Yes. Do pedophiles normally go around with stopwatches? They do if we tell them that we're interested in it. They do if we tell them that we're interested in it.
After his research, Alfred Kinsey compiled all the data. He put them into this book here, The Sexual Behavior in the Human Male. Okay, it came out in 1948, and then later in 1953, he had The Sexual Behavior of the Human Female. These two books are referred to as the Kinsey Reports. There is a list of the 10 most harmful books ever made, and Sexual Behavior in the Human Male is number 4. Sexual Behavior in the Human Female is number 5 on that list. Okay, Alfred Kinsey was funded by the Rockefeller Foundation. Okay, in 1941 they started funding him. It was mostly by grants through the National Research Council, but they also funded him directly. From 1948 to 1953, it was kind of a media blitz, okay? He was all over, the magazines, the newspapers, the radio, everything, okay? And so the media was, well taken care of to push this and promote this as, in more of a positive light, or this is normal, this is the new normal. And so that's what they did. And then, when it looked like Alfred Kinsey was going to get in trouble with Congress, the Rockefeller Foundation, they pulled the funding from Alfred Kinsey, and they shifted it over to fund the U.S. Model Penal Code, which resulted in our laws being gutted, okay, and then filled with Alfred Kinsey's science. So they applied Alfred Kinsey to the laws. In 1949, he testified before the California General Assembly Subcommittee on Sex Crimes. He argued specifically for granting immediate parole to all the people that were suspected child molesters, and he warned that social hysteria does more harm to the child than the actual molestation of the child. Okay? And this was at a time where the committee was just getting ready to toughen the sex laws to protect children because they had just had 2 murders of these little girls. And so Alfred Kinsey comes and says, hey, I'm a scientist, this is my scientific data, and based on my research, children are sexual from birth. They enjoy this, and said that the pedophiles do not repeat their crimes. And so that you must let them all go. And California listened to them. They let 9,000 inmates go, 9,000 child molesters. Kinsey has been credited with convincing state legislatures across the United States to reduce penalties for all sorts of things, okay? Here's changes that were made to the existing laws, and this is just a few. Criticized judicial condemnation of sex offenders, Pennsylvania, 1952. Lightened sex crime penalties, Ohio, 1959. Promoted the harmlessness of boy prostitution, Duke University, 1960. Claimed that children seduced men, Missouri, 1973, Tennessee, 1965. Expressed beneficent concern for pedophiles, Georgia, 1969. Reduced penalties for rape, Oklahoma, 1970. Asserted that 95% of males are sex offenders, Oregon, 1972. Legalized prostitution, Maine, 1976. Laws were changed and repealed based on his fraudulent data, leaving women and children unprotected. These are just a few of the things that Kinsey helped undermine laws across. He just went state by state by state. Okay? These were laws protecting women and children that he helped undermine or get rid of. And that's not even all of them. I guarantee you that Alfred Kinsey has changed the laws in your state in some way, shape, or form. Corrupted in some way, shape, or form. The Kinsey files. Virtually every single page on the Kinsey report touches on legal code. Every page. What that means is that there's no bar association, no law school journal, no lawyers, and no committee. None of those can even consider sex laws without using Alfred Kinsey's study. He is cited 5,749 times in the social science department. From 1982 to 1996, his data from the Kinsey reports was used as court authority in making court decisions for people 799 times. There's more than 650 citations in law journals from 1980 and 2000. I mean, like serious law journals like Westlaw. 650, okay? His data directed the American Law Institute Model Penal Code in eliminating and weakening 52 U.S. sex-related laws. 52. 1973, the U.S. Supreme Court on Roe versus Wade. They relied heavily on Kinsey's data in making that decision. Based on his fraud data, that is how they decided the Roe versus Wade case, because in his data it said that 87% of single women have abortions, 25% of married women have abortions, and they took that as fact, they took that as science, and they relied on that heavily to decide Roe versus Wade. Do you wonder? I don't know if you saw my video that I made before this. Check it out if you haven't. But it's about the books that parents are finding in that the kids are taking home from the school libraries that are being shown to the children. You know, you see these things and you ask yourself, how the hell are these available for our children? If I were to give a book like this to a child, I would go to jail. If you were to give a book like this to a child, you would go to jail. However, for some reason, our schools can give it to them, and there's no problem with that they're allowed to do that. Our kids are able to walk in and check out these pornographic books with no parental oversight, with really no oversight whatsoever. They could do whatever they want. Parents don't even have to know, really. And they could check these books out, and there's no consequences. There's no problem with that. Why is that? How is this okay? Right here. This is right here is why it's okay. When Alfred Kinsey, he tried to import foreign erotica for study in his sex research, and it clashed with the federal obscenity law. And there was a legal battle. The federal government stated that there's a Tariff Act of 1930 prohibiting any kind of importing of any type of obscene material into the United States. And Alfred Kinsey was having none of that. And he argued it and said the principle of academic freedom is guaranteed to the scholar. You know, and that the scholar have access to this erotic material because it's necessary for him to conduct his research. And ultimately, in the end, in 1957, it established a milestone in the obscenity law, where that penal code was tweaked a little bit with the law now with something called variable obscenity. Okay, and the concept of that variable obscenity is which is the idea that obscenity is not absolute, but it's determined by the nature of the audience. And that is why inappropriate books are going into our children's school. One would think that the nature of the audience being children, maybe that wouldn't be a good idea, but they don't look at it like that. They look at it as educational purposes. These books are there for educational purposes, and therefore the children, it's allowed to be in their libraries. So if you want to get the books out of your school, this is what you need to attack. You need to get that law changed. That obscenity law has to be changed. You might be able to get them out, you know, locally out of your kid's school, but it's not going to stop them from coming back in. It's not going to stop a teacher from having it in their own classroom to show the kids. You have to attack that obscenity law and get that changed in order for the books to not be allowed. Between 1960 and 1969, the number of forcible rapes committed by males under the age of 18 had increased by 86%. In 1990, the American Bar Association, they reported that 80% of convicted child molesters took a plea bargain and served no prison time. It's a Science magazine from April 24th, 1998 stated that if the science is fraud, the laws will be toxic. Amen. So we let a man normalize child sex abuse under the name of science, and we are still continuing to do it today. Who asks the rapist if their victim enjoyed it, and then takes that answer as science? Like, why are we asking pedophiles for insight on our children's sex education? Why? Hey, you know, the pedophile said the kids enjoyed it, so I don't see what the problem is. You know how ridiculous that sounds? It sounds crazy. But that's exactly what we have let happen and control everything. The laws, the universities, the schools, the science. So, in 1948, at Indiana University, Alfred Kinsey's, grand scheme kind of went into play, and then it flows down to the universities. So, like NYU and University of Pennsylvania and the ISHS, they started in those major universities using with graduate level degrees. Okay, and these were graduate level degrees in sex health, and using health as a subset. So they didn't call it sex education. They called this like a health class. Okay, and then these graduates, okay, they would get their degree, and then they would form these kind of commissions or societies or sex cults or kind of like a society. And those societies would then go and train the other teachers so the teachers can teach the other teachers and the judges and the children and the legislatures and all of that. And there was no other sexuality canon taught. Okay, there was no other way of teaching anything. It was, this is healthy, this is normal, and this is the only way there is to think about. Alfred Kinsey in 1955, they cut his funding, and things kind of went downhill for him from there, and he ultimately died. He died a year later in 1956. Okay, but his purpose, his purpose and his agenda had already been well implemented and had a mind of its own at this point.
Now, after he died, everything had already been put in motion. It didn't just stop there, okay? So first, I want to talk about Planned Parenthood, okay? Planned Parenthood was created by a woman named Margaret Sanger. She was not a very good person.
Okay, TikTok keeps violating this video and muting it, and I'm not quite sure why, so I'm trying to fix it. So I'm not going to play what I had recorded. I'm just going to say, this is Margaret Sanger. She was the founder of Planned Parenthood. I'm going to go ahead and let you read those quotes right there. That's what she believed in, okay? That's why she created Planned Parenthood, was to accomplish the things that are in those quotes. And this was a quote of Hillary Clinton, where I remember when Hillary Clinton was running against Trump, how she was just ranting and raving about how wonderful Margaret Sanger was, and all, how much she did for women's rights, and what a great person she was. Knowing the reason, why she created it, she knew. They laugh, they think it's funny. It's like a big joke to them, and I don't think it's very funny. I don't think you guys would think it's very funny. These people are not good people. We really need to pay attention to the people that we support and what we put our support into, and make sure that we really do align with the same things they do.
So this is Mary Calderon. Mary Calderon was the medical director for Planned Parenthood. Okay, she's a devotee to Alfred Kinsey, and she's a pedophile. She says professionals who study children have affirmed the strong sexuality of the newborn. Children are sexual and think sexual thoughts and do sexual things. She believed that sex education had too many no's in it. And that what the problem was is that we were just repressed. America was repressed. Now, so in the late 1950s, Mary Calderon went to the Kinsey Institute in Indiana for a meeting. Okay, and this group of radicals, these sexual revolutionaries, they plotted how to advance their cause, or Alfred Kinsey's cause. All right, so it was decided from that meeting that SICUS would handle the sex education, with multiple Kinsey Institute representatives serving on the board. Okay, now SICUS emerged out of the Kinsey Institute meeting. Okay, and so Mary Calderon was assigned a role from that meeting. She left Planned Parenthood and got money from Hugh Hefner to fund and create SICUS. Okay, and SICUS stood for the Sexuality, Information, and Education Council of the United States. Okay, so she founded SICUS, And on the board with her was a man named Wardell Pomeroy.
Wardell Pomeroy worked as the head director over at the Kinsey Institute.
He's the one that actually documented a lot of the claims about the children. And he was very much a pro-incest advocate. Okay, in Time magazine, there was an article called Attacking the Last Taboo. In that article, it says, he is quoted, "It is time to admit that incest need not be a perversion or a symptom of mental illness. Incest between children and adults can sometimes be beneficial." Okay, so he served with Mary Calderon on the board at Psychus, and they are the ones that are responsible for creating the sex education taught in America's public schools. And Psychus also sets the standards for the entire world in sex education. So fast forward more to what's going on right now.
And we track this globally because I like to fight the enemy on their territory. I don't believe they need to come into my house. I don't wait until they come here. So this is what happened. And this is fact. And if this ruffles your feathers, then so be it. The World Health Organization took Kinsey's document and wrote a sexual manifesto of today for the world's children. A proposition to this is how to treat children with sex for the world. They brought in a couple friends. They brought in UNESCO, which is an arm of the United Nations. They brought in SICUS, which is the overarching governing body in the United States for all curriculum. And then they brought in one more friend to finalize this curriculum, the International Planned Parenthood Foundation. Okay? Those 5 entities wrote the new sexual manifesto based on Kinsey's work. Every pedophile today, Kinsey is their hero. He's their champion. Do you know that we've not had a single mass murder in American history? Not one. Whether name the names, whether it's Bundy or whoever, that was not a porn addict. They're all porn addicts. They're all pedophiles. And I want to explain to you how this works. So they write this manifesto. They always take it to Africa first. We saw it. They went to Kenya. They tested this curriculum that they wrote in Kenya. They were successful. They completely compromised children. They took it to Europe. And then they literally looked for one suitor. They looked for one suitor in the United States. This is fact. That said, I'll be the first to employ and bring in that manifesto as a curriculum into the United States. And Gavin Newsom raised his hand. It's a fact. Gavin Newsom signed the comprehensive sex ed curriculum into law by executive order without the State Board of Education of California getting a vote. We're currently helping the State Board of Education in California fight against Newsom, because they did not get to vote. Today in California, comprehensive sex ed is the law. If your child is in a public school, that child's taught comprehensive sex ed. From what age, Yaku? From kindergarten.
Yep.
I have every curriculum in my study in my house. What they teach in kindergarten today, in the classroom, in the public classroom, they teach masturbation.
Yep.
This is fact. The second Newsom signed that document, NC, in Washington said, I'm next. Signed executive order. Inslee is a coward. Because Inslee signed the document at 1:20 a.m. March 20th in the middle of COVID, when not a single parent could show up in the state of Washington to protest it, and sign it into executive order. And the comprehensive sex ed curriculum went across the United States like a wildfire. 27 states before we could blink, we started fighting it. No entity in the world has ever won a case against comprehensive sex ed. Anywhere. Europe, Africa, anywhere. Until we did a show, and I'm not tooting our horn, we did a show, and a very dear friend, Glenn Beck, said, I'll stand with you in this. Absolutely. Texas voted on it. It was an 11-4 yes vote. A preliminary 11-4 yes vote. We had 72 hours to protest. Glenn said, come on the show. 6.5 million Texans responded, and it swung to a 9-5 no vote. And Texas was the first state in the world to win against comprehensive sex ed. Okay? That's a fact. But we're a free country. Austin ISD said, no, we're going to opt it in. So today, if your child is in Austin, you're taught comprehensive sex ed. So when Johnny moves from Austin to Dallas, and Johnny walks into your kid's classroom, Johnny's going to have a conversation with your 9-year-old about anal sex, about consent. But then Newsom said this is not enough, so he signed State Bill 145. State Bill 145 creates a 10-year age gap. So when a 24-year-old, which she's a victim, 100%, we don't need force for a coercion, it's up to a federal judge to decide whether it was consensual or not. So forget about, statutory laws, forget about, 17 and under is a victim in the state of California. You have lawmakers writing law in direct contrast to federal statute, allowing people to rape and hurt and abuse children. And why is it important to teach a 5-year-old, by the way, pre-K, about sex?
Okay, I'm going to have to stop it there because I don't want TikTok to violate this again. But just to end it, keep in mind that today's comprehensive sex education that's in the children's school, that's in the schools, is 100% based off of Alfred Kinsey's manifesto, his research. So you got to pay attention to the wording of things because they trick you when you go to the they'll say oh, well, it's age appropriate. Well, you got to think that's pretty subjective. What's age appropriate to you might be different than what I would consider age appropriate, but we got to think of the curriculum. The curriculum's based on Alfred Kinsey. It's his age appropriate. His age appropriate was birth. Okay, so when they say age appropriate, it's BS. Okay.
Just saying, sexualize the children, that's pretty, that's a pretty broad statement, and I'm aware of that. However, you got to think this isn't just, this isn't an isolated issue. This is a global thing that is happening, okay? There are many different curriculums. There's many different laws. It's going to be different everywhere you go. I think it's important to just realize that psychists emerged out of the Kinsey Institute, okay? They decided that psychists should carry out the sexual education that Kinsey envisioned. Okay, psychists is the Kinsey's arm and the Kinsey Institute's arm into our children's schools. And that is who made the curriculum. So there's 100 different types of curriculum that it could be. It's all coming from the same place, all with the same purpose, okay? To carry out, the sex education that Alfred Kinsey envisioned. Okay, so that's why I say it so broadly. And they're well aware that if they get our children early enough, they can use neuroplasticity to wire their brains and to think very differently about the world, to think very differently about themselves, that they would otherwise be habitually exposed to. Okay, they're aware of this. This is a plan that went into place a long time ago. So the goal is for our children to be open to just about any form of sexual expression. Okay, it's not about preventing disease. It's not about abstinence. It's about sexual freedom and sexual experimentation and giving consent to the sexual freedom and sexual experimentation. Okay, when a teacher says, that's not happening, we're not teaching that, we have to know better. When they say it's age appropriate, we need to know, we need to think back and go, okay, well, this is Alfred Kinsey's curriculum. Age appropriate, what's age appropriate to him was birth. You see what I'm saying? When they say science-based, it's Alfred Kinsey's science. It's bullshit. We can't be tricked by the words that they use. The third goal is to destroy the nuclear family. And, when you think about it, why would they want to destroy the nuclear family? If I wanted to, say, change the entire nation, if I wanted to take over, the United States of America, what would be one of the first things I would want to do to make this a new world order, a one world, one ruled government, communistic government? What would I want to do? Probably, what? Destroy the nuclear family. Destroy that family, tear it apart, the one that produces the stable children. The future contributors to our nation's wealth and our nation's power. Probably want to promote some gay agenda in there too, wouldn't you say? That one targets fertility. Okay, that one lowers the birth rate. While we're at it, let's add some, toxic masculinity. How about some of that, or some extreme feminism? Okay, so we have women, I saw this on the news, we have women who are unable to define what it means to be a woman. And these women are teaching our children about themselves? What? Okay, and then at the same time they're encouraging our boys to wear dresses? And you wonder why? You know, there's a woman being physically abused and raped on a public train in New York City while the entire train, the cabin that train, watch, and not one man says a thing or does anything to stop this woman being raped. And then all of a sudden he's bad for not doing that? Well, what are you teaching them to do? Have How are you teaching them to act? Why do you think that is? How do you think that reaction to a woman being raped in front of all those people, what do you think the reaction would have been if that happened, say, 10 years ago? What about 20, 30, 40? It'd be completely different. What is the point of creating a world where kids don't know what gender is, other than to confuse them? It would destroy the centuries-old family unit that produced generation after generation of Americans, the most powerful nation, right? That's a good thing, right? Not for everybody. Instead, we're going to get a society that does not reproduce. A society that doesn't reproduce is a dying society. A society that feminizes the male population. What does that do? That makes for a pretty weak military. We have to stop this. This isn't okay. And I don't know how. I really don't know how, other than a mass exodus from all schools and just letting them crumble in on themselves. You know, if someone has a better idea, please comment below. I just know this is wrong, and we can't be doing this. We can't allow this to happen, or that's the end of everything.
Begin here tonight with this. What your kids can read in school libraries has become a statewide controversy.
Topic of what's in the county school libraries in the national spotlight.
Tempers flared over books on gender and sex that some parents are calling porn.
School parents are saying some of the books on the shelves have explicit sexual material and they want them gone.
That many say are too explicit to be in the library.
Numbers running high all over the books their kids have access to in school. The main criticism is that they aren't age appropriate because they talk about sex acts.
To remove sexually explicit books from its libraries. Books in their school libraries. Some parents are calling those books sexually suggestive and obscene.
Messages they said were explicit and sexually graphic.
This dispute with his local school board has drawn some national attention after he had his microphone turned off while attempting to read a passage out of a book that he considered pornographic.
Try to be careful so I don't get kicked out. Excited now, he pushed into her. As she squeezed her eyes as tightly as she could, her tongue circled her lips. He pushed harder, his breath heavy and labored. She scratched his back, and he cried out. She bit his ear and pulled his hair. There's a lot more to it. It's 50 Shades of Grey and CCSD.
Excuse me.
Yes.
We have children at home.
I know.
It's live streaming, and it's really not appropriate.
Don't you find the irony in that? You're exactly saying exactly what I'm telling you.
Are you going to eat her? Yeah, Earl, I'm going to eat her. Do you even know how to eat? No, not really. Papa Gaines never sat you down and said, son, one day you're going to have to eat. No, but he taught me how to eat a. Yep, I would teach you some technique, but it's a little complicated. Son, I don't have time for that. I got 20 over here I need to eat. Is that right? I'm on a deadline.
Placing her knee between my legs, she wrestled off her sweater and unbuttoned her blouse and pulled off her panties, and she climbed on top of me before I even had a chance to savor the moment. I'm not saying that I wasn't grateful. To this day, I remain grateful to Gina, or whatever whim or combination of alcohol and restlessness prompted her to unbutton my jeans and straddle me in the passenger seat of that car. And quote, GD, effing, C-word, F-word, S-word, A-word, effer, I yelled. I flailed and stomped my boot in disgust as a dollop of S-word hit the sliding glass door. S-word, effing, mother of F. F you, I said.
He pulled out a bindle and a six-pack of beer. For the next 20 minutes, we snorted and drank, climbing to a very tall buzz. We talked and joked and giggled, and it all seemed just like it should. Crank revved, pistons firing full bore, passion firecrackered in tiny bursts from thigh to belly button. Oh, baby, I want you so bad. My shirt tore open. Wait, I've waited for weeks. Put up and shut up.
Together, and she loved this boy. She was doing it. She was having sex with Charlie. He moved his mouth to her breast, and she didn't care if she was done because Jesus, he circled her nipple with his tongue before sucking and tugging. Charlie, he switched to her other breast and everything. Her muscles tightened and she turned her head to the side as she rose one last time to meet him. Then she let go. Charlie pulled out of her slowly and lay beside her. Not appropriate for any child of any age. And I can sure tell you, I don't want my kids reading.
To put on a show. So not only do you have to be hung, talented, long-lasting, multiple comer, but you have to be okay effing a sexy 18-year-old front.
Do you think you have to? People.
Wait, this
people
is
don't have a
in
choice.
our schools. Our kids are reading this, and you're going to tell me I can't read it to you because it's inappropriate?
It's being
Everybody.
They don't have enough anal sex. They need adults to tell them how to masturbate. And what I call that is... So here's what I'm asking you. You have a hard time hearing this from me, but this is for 10 years old and up, and this bill was passed for 5-year-olds. And you have a hard time me sitting here telling you the words anal sex, masturbation. That's hard for you, or the time's up.
Staying sober, Dana's eyes hone in on my new stepmom's 32-year-old ass. She elbows me. 3's a total MILF. To the female board members, do you know what a MILF is? It's slang for a mother I'd like to fuck. Taken out of context? Probably not. This book contains the word fuck 49 times, the word shit 31 times, the word pussy 3 times, and the word asshole 10
better
times.
books out there that can appeal to Indian girls that don't portray them as a South Asian sexual conquest for European conquerors.
The book in the 9th grade diversity library, Other Broken Things by Krista Desir, which is about an alcoholic 17-year-old girl in a sexual relationship with a 38-year-old man.
What's going where,
including
the color of the fluids and the pictures, the man on top of the woman.
To teach our children fisting, where you insert your fist in somebody's anus or vagina. You think body fluid and blood play. Some people enjoy any number of body fluids sexually: ejaculate, vaginal fluids, menses, which is periods, urine, or blood. They may simply enjoy tasting, feeling, or smelling them during sexual activities. Maybe you guys want to do that, but not with our kids. You think it's funny? We don't think it's funny. We have a whole group of parents out here.
Not that it really matters. In 4th grade, at a church youth group meeting out in the bushes, I touched Doug Goebel's dick, and he touched mine. In fact, there was even some mouths involved. Next one, page 91. What if I told you I touched another guy's dick? What if I told you I sucked it? I was 10 years old, but it's true. I put Doug Goebel's dick in my mouth. I was in 4th grade. It was no big deal. He sucked mine too. And you know what? It wasn't terrible. Page 174. I don't know if I made a sign for this one. Yeah, I did. He talked about old times at the church, but never mentioned our penises or the fact that he never said 10 words to me after our little foray in the bushes. Not a single reference to holding or tugging or sucking dicks. All I could think about while he was chatting me up was his little salamander between my 4th grade fingers, rapidly engorging with blood. Page 230. I didn't make a sign for this. Why won't you admit we sucked each other's dicks? We shared a Hershey's bar, then you showed me your dick. The next thing I know, it's in my mouth. We sucked each other's dick, and you're pretending it didn't happen. What sort of diversity are you intending to teach my child with material like this? In addition, I'll share with you the exceptional quality of vocabulary. I stopped counting on page 66 after 44 fucks and 41 shits. I won't go into my 4th grade daughter, but we don't, this is not a thing for 4th graders. Who normalizes sex acts between 4th graders? I'll tell you who.